All right. If you could all take your seats, please. Good morning to you. Brisk morning here in Truckee. Just a reminder of where we live, huh? Brought my ice skates this morning to get here. So, it is March. This is the Good Morning Truckee, and we have a good one this morning with 5 speakers. So we're going to dispense with reading out the sponsors who are up here so you can see them behind me. Thank you to all of our sponsors and all the committees that put this on. We want to save time for the speakers, and importantly, we want to go around the room and introduce everybody that is here. So let's do that first. Why don't we start with our speaker table and go ahead here.
My name is Larry Lane. I am the wildlife specialist through the U.S. Department of Agriculture out in Nevada County for the last 20 years.
Well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Carly White. I'm the unit wildlife biologist for Placer and Nevada counties with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
I'm Olivia Ehlers. I'm also with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'm the new Plumas and Sierra regional biologist, but also a wolf coordinator.
Will Richardson. I'm executive director with the Tahoe Institute for Natural Science.
I'm Leslie Loveland. I'm the trails manager for Tahoe Donner.
I'm Tricia Stickney. I'm the membership and programs manager for the Truckee Chamber of Commerce.
Eric?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Eric Hornvat, wildfire prevention manager with Truckee Fire.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dylan Sheedy, registered professional forester for Truckee Fire.
Jerry Jones, just a resident and interested in the program.
All right, welcome. Back.
Amy Sanders. I work for the Truckee Sanitary District.
Eric Boldring Travel.
I'm Kathleen. I'm with Peak Digital Studios. I do digital and social marketing.
Good morning, everyone. Kelly Cutler with the Truckee Cultural District and the Truckee Chamber.
I'm Michael Myers. I'm the executive director of the Sierra State Parks Foundation.
I'm Amber Dodson with Silent A Photography.
John Zamitis, Truckee citizen scientist.
Let's jump back to the middle table there.
Erin Casey, I'm the CEO for the Tahoe Housing Hub.
Shelley Purdy. I'm advocacy and outreach director for Tahoe Housing Hub.
Dr. Rob.
Rob Darjankevich, Tahoe Forest Hospital board member.
Christy Darjankevich, nonprofit consultant.
Amber Burke with the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District and the Truckee Chamber Board.
Candy Blessy, I'm just a resident, retired teacher. Osage and outdoor education.
All right. Nobody's just anything in Truckee, right? Oh, a little bit more than that. All right.
My Yumi Peacock, publisher of New Shining, Biologist, a term I've learned from Will Richardson.
Hi, good morning, Todd Rollinson. I'm the U.S. Forest Service District Biologist here at Truckee.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Mack. I'm the manager of communication and engagement at Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation.
Crystal Sumner, Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation.
Mr. Porter.
Jim Porter used to be Raymond's boss at Porter Simon.
That's right.
And then passed me up and went on to great things, and I'm on the Tahoe Fund board.
Yeah. Martis Camp, Martis Fund. Mark Johnson.
Yeah. John Zabriskie, Nevada County Transportation Commission and the Truckee Town Council.
Richard Anderson, Truckee River Watershed Council board member.
My name's Jim Dill, and I'm Fish and Wildlife Commissioner, District 5. Nevada County.
Mr. Owens.
Ted Owens, board member, Truckee Donner Land Trust. Jim, good to see you. And Tahoe Forest Health System. And I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you all Anna Roth, who is our new president and CEO. Getting her feet wet, been here for what, 5 days now?
Melissa?
Melissa Williams, I'm communications and Truckee Jobs Collective Chamber.
Great.
Michelle Johnson, Auerbach Engineering Manager, and I'm a Chamber Ambassador.
All right, did I forget anybody? I don't think so. I'm Raven Whittington. I'm an attorney at Porter Simon, and I am the chair of this chamber board. Happy to be the presenter this morning. So we are going to have a presentation about the wildlife in the area and all different aspects. I guess there's some out there after being this cold. Going to be entertained to start us off this morning is Jim Dill. Jim, you have 10 minutes. I know you want to go for an hour, but 10 minutes, okay? Jim Dill. Thank you, Raven.
Okay.
And it just keeps going.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Thanks for having me. A wonderful group of people in here, a lot of movers and shakers in town. I came to Olympic Valley in 1972. I started ski racing there. I moved to Olympic Valley in 1978, and I've been a resident of Truckee since 1993. I live out in Juniper Hill. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Truckee, and I'm excited to live in Truckee. It's a wonderful community. And I was appointed by Hardy Bullock in 2022 as our Nevada County Fish and Wildlife Commissioner for District 5. And I always have to kind of review what is District 5. It includes the communities of Soda Springs, Washington, Graniteville, Hirschdale, Boca, Floreston, and the town of Truckee, as well as the corridors of Highway 49, Highway 20, Highways 89, as well as Highway 80. And Fish and Wildlife. We have some great, wonderful PhDs and biologists here, and I'm more of a light duty kind of person. We have 6 meetings a year down on Maydew Avenue down in Nevada City, and I do represent District 5, and we pay attention to what's going on fish and wildlife wise. I report to Hardy Bullock. I also report to our board, and we also report to the bigger Fish and Wildlife Commission, which is the bigger political entity in Sacramento, and more as an advisory kind of application is really where I come in. And I'm one of 5 members representing our district here in Truckee. A lot of our commissioners are involved in a lot of different organizations. Richard, you mentioned the Truckee Watershed Commission, just a lot of fantastic organizations. The Deer Foundation, Rocky Mountain Elk, you see this list here. We were established by a Nevada County Board of Supervisors resolution, and like I mentioned, we advise the Nevada County Board of Supervisors, and I think that our supervisor is just fantastic in terms of his communication abilities. Very good communicator. Hardy, having been from the western side of the county, now spending a lot of time up here, and I just love working with him because he is such a good communicator. The Fish and Wildlife Propagation Fund, the easiest way for me to describe that is we manage some revenue that is generated from fines that are levied by our wardens, typically, for those that are doing things illegally, whether it's hunting or fishing. And we dole out that revenue in the form of grants back to those in need in the county. Over the last 3 fiscal years, we've given out a total of about $28,000 in grants. We do meetings, as I mentioned, 6 times a year, so bi-monthly. And there's certainly some issues that are relative to our area. And the great thing is we have biologists here that talk about the science of the matter. We've had chronic wasting disease show up in deer, not in our area specifically, but south in one of the D zones. We have a bear population, a black bear population that has increased 3-fold since 2012. That creates a lot of issues. We don't have a lot of hunters hunting black bears these days. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of eating bear myself, but and we all love our bears, right? We all love our bears, but how do we control that population? Deer populations have been low up here especially. Now, whether that was the winter of 2022 or whether that's canopies of our forest being overgrown and our forest being so dense that the light's not getting to the feed on the base of the forest floor, and that has become an issue. Nice to have our firefighters in the room, and we talk about forest fuel reduction projects. We talk about that in terms of making for healthier forests, but certainly that can be a very positive impact on wildlife when we thin that forest canopy, letting the sunlight into the bottom and the base, and letting that food, which is essential for deer population. And that's been one of the issues as well. We're going to talk a little bit today, I think, some of the biologists about some of the rezoning of some of our hunting zones, and that's based on the migration of animals, of deer specifically. And deer migratory routes have changed over the years. And as those routes change, it makes sense for us to advise the bigger Fish and Wildlife Commission in Sacramento that it probably does make sense to rezone some of those districts that have been in place for a long time. So we have conflicts around here, right? And because of that bear population increasing dramatically, we know that Ann Bryant's in the news quite a bit, right? As our, the bear lover from the western side of Lake Tahoe, and we want to keep those conflicts at a minimum. The biologists will talk a little bit about wolves, and it's exciting. We have Larry here, we have Carly, Libby, we have PhDs in the room that study the science of these animals. And while we didn't introduce wolves to California, they're in California and they're coming in from the north. I believe there's more than 7 packs of wolves that are in the state. And it's exciting, but it also creates some challenges. Here in Truckee locally, we have some property issues, property rights issues, private property rights downriver from Herschdale. And how are those rights going to be handled and dealt with? Enabling access to the river, and whether that's for rafters, fishermen, recreationalists. And I know that that's a topic that Hardy Bullock is working very, very intently on. It's not an easy solution, not an easy solution at all. So these are things that really are on the top of our list in terms of how we advise the bigger board. I got into this position because I took over from Bob Tilton running the Kids Trout Derby. We do it every year. We do it the third Saturday of June. We used to do it in July, but we found that June has better temperatures. June also enables us to track more local kids before they fan out for the summer. This year it will be on June 21st. It'll be our 35th Kids Trout Fishing Derby. We get great support from the Nevada County Fish and Wildlife Commission. We get great support from the American River Trout Hatchery. It's a fantastic event. Tell your kids, tell your grandkids. We get lots of kids and parents out at the pond behind Donner Memorial State Park. It's actually owned by Donner Memorial State Park right now. And that was my introduction to this position, as I was running the Fish and Derby for many years and crossed paths with these commissioners. And Ray Butler used to be the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner, and then Kevin Murphy stepped in when he retired. And now Mr. Murph is moving to Nevada, and I stepped in 2022. So I'm excited to be in the position. Any questions?
I have one. The fines that are generated, is that locally, just within our district that you're doling out?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Nevada County. Yes.
What are the biggest fines for condition without a license?
So it's interesting because there has been a ring of deer poachers going on, especially down in on the western slope. So down in Nevada City, Grass Valley. I talked about a little bit of a lack of deer population up here in the mountains. All the deer are hanging out down there, and they're to the point where we're proposing an antlerless deer hunt to thin those big numbers out. But there's been poaching rings down there, Raven, and it's like anything else. It's sometimes easy to catch some of these guys, but not necessarily easy to prosecute them or collect. Right. And that's been the latest, though, a ring of poachers poaching trophy deer on mostly private property, and those would be substantial fines. We also pay for the wardens to have decoys, deer decoys that are actually placed out in the forest, right? And for those of you that haven't been around the rifle deer community, deer hunting community, sometimes it's a kind of a rowdy, macho group of people, and it can involve alcohol sometimes. And these guys will poach deer, and they'll shoot the decoys. And And then our warden's right there, and they're there to levy the fine on those poachers. So crazy stuff. And when we actually part of our budget supports purchasing those decoys, and the cost of that, like everything in life, has gone up dramatically. So, yeah. Question.
You might cover this with the other bear thing, but did you hear about this proposed law that they're going to allow dog hunting for bears? What's the opinion on that?
So that's a very good question. And that really revolves around the fact that how do you reduce the population of black bear? Really, truly, one of the only ways to reduce the population is to hunt bear. And the most effective way to hunt bear, which seems inhumane, and I used to think it was inhumane for dogs to tree a bear and then the hunters shoot the bear out of the tree dead. Seems very inhumane to me. But we need to come up with a solution to thin the population of bear. And if that is something that can do that by letting hunters professionally use dogs, it might be a solution. And we're discussing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you, Jim Dill. How do we get Jim Porter a deer decoy suit? All right, up next we have Larry Lane. Larry Lane is a wildlife specialist with the Nevada County Ag Department. He's here to talk about, apropos, bears, I believe. Welcome, Larry.
So I do not have a fancy slideshow. So I decided just to spend a few minutes and discuss the unique challenges that Truckee gives me. I've been the wildlife specialist in Nevada County for 20 years. And I split my view of Nevada County. There's Nevada County and then there's Truckee. And just because of the weather conditions and just the environment up here and the migratory deer herd and the different predators that come with them, that poses one aspect. And we have a lot of our resident animals like our raccoons or beavers. I don't get a lot of lion calls up here because we don't have the livestock like we do in the rest of the county. But we have a lot of tourists that come up here and vacation homes. So we don't have a lot of permanent residents that are also dealing with the wildlife. So I get two views on it a lot, and I get two different types of people handling the situation. So it's always an interview whenever I get calls on the wildlife up here. One of the things that my agency really focuses on is implementing non-lethal practices to prevent wildlife damage. Up here we have a lot of bears, a lot of beavers, and a lot of raccoons, and coyotes. So those four animals are the bulk of my calls up here. Biggest challenge is having the landowners and the property owners participate in the non-lethal practices. And I can't emphasize that enough because a lot of it has to do with weather and how often they're up here. Moving forward, we've discussed through the Ag Office and through my agency trying to get more of the active community non-lethal programs going. So whether it be beaver prevention with wiring trees, painting trees, some of the non-lethal bear stuff. I know Department of Fish and Wildlife, they do some of the no welcome mats. We're going to try to use some of the hot wire and ribbons more. We've had good success. If anybody has any questions on that, feel free to ask after. Give me a holler on the phone and I can go in more in depth. That's kind of an in-depth conversation. And then with the raccoons, I like to tell people all the preventive measures for those happens in the summertime. Walk around your houses. Walk around your cabins, see where all the holes are. That's going to save you a lot of time and energy in the wintertime. Big part of my focus down in the rest of the county, just to give you a brief history, is we do a lot of lion hazing. Sounds like in the future we'll probably be expanding on the bear hazing. Maybe CDFW can discuss that more. But one of the tools, and I'm just going to touch on this because this was brought up, one of the tools we do utilize are the hound dogs. The interaction between the hounds and the lions or the hounds and bears is extremely minimal. These animals, from the time they were born, their safety mechanism is to climb a tree. So there's a little bit of misconception out there about the hounds on the landscape and then the interaction with the wildlife. It is one of our greatest tools that we have to us and has a minimal impact between the relationship of the hound and the wildlife that's being pursued. So I don't know if that helps with any of your...
Yeah, so you just let out the hounds and they scare the animal enough to know to not come back to that area? Is that the essential?
So the hound animal relationship, that's going to be the segue to getting the people there, and then that visual between the animal in the tree and the person on the ground is giving the negative experience. But I just wanted to, because you brought that up, so I thought it'd be a good way to bring that up. Yeah, utilizing those hounds is a great tool. It's one of those things that we'd be really handicapped if we did not have those as a resource. There's a lot of things to it. We use them in research. We use them in, if we're doing collaring projects, it's extremely safe. And the people that are handling the dogs, they take great care of the dogs. And the dog safety is first and foremost. But yeah, the one thing to remember, and you guys will probably hear a lot of this stuff come up, especially with the bears in the near future, is bears, lions, bobcats, any of the animals that climb for safety, since they're little and they can get up, that's their safety mechanism. Being up the tree is what they do, and they wait for danger to pass. Have done a little bit of work up here with the dogs, not a whole lot. Like I said, we don't have the livestock up here, but in the rest of the county, I do quite a bit with the hounds. And I decided I will leave a lot of room for questions and answers because this job has such a huge scope. So if anybody has any questions on the wildlife up here, feel free to ask me. Question.
What success do you have, or is it even a practice of relocating, let's just say, mountain lions and bears? So they just come back to their area?
As of right now, the mechanism for relocation when it comes to mountain lions or bears that are causing depredation, that's non-existent. So we try to utilize every measure possible in order to not get to that point. Just a little clarification on that. If it does get to the point of animal removal, that is a decision made by the person that is having the issue. And typically that's reviewed, making sure all preventive measures have been exhausted before that thought even goes forward and that's going to be under what's called a depredation permit, and that's the removal of that animal because of extensive damage, whether it's livestock, personal property, and when that does happen, there's a paper trail of preventive measures that have been put in practice. Question?
Are there estimates on the size of the population of, say, the black bears or mountain lions and that kind of stuff in the area here, or the percent growth of population of those?
As far as the hard percentage, I'd be CDFW on that. From my experience of just watching the population expand into different parts of the county, when I first started, I very rarely got calls. If you guys are familiar with like the Penn Valley area, south, so the southern end of Nevada County, that's a norm now. So all through that Oak Savannah, through the high country, it's the entire county is bear country now. To where it was an exciting, rare occurrence, now is a normal kind of a hindrance. It's hard for the small producers. We all know about the fire danger in the counties, in the rural counties. It's hard for the small producers that have anything on the landscape for fire prevention as far as goats and sheep and stuff to help knock that down without having to deal with predation. So it has become a huge challenge, especially with our bears. My bears account for just as many livestock depredations as my lions do.
Yeah, one is a comment and one's a question. With regard to the dogs, people need to understand when you're out there banging pots and pans versus a dog chasing a bear, it's kind of the same thing. The idea a bear wants to run, not attack. And so it's not as inhumane as it sounds. It's an opportunity to control a situation.
Right.
And I think people need to understand that the dogs don't attack the bears, they chase the bears. The other thing, as you mentioned at the beginning, there's two populations. Those of us that live here and deal with wildlife all the time, and those that come up, second homeowners and whatever. In reading things, especially on my favorite social app Nextdoor, you realize that the education of those that come up as visitors, renters, second homeowners is minimal at best. What can you do? What are you doing to try to educate that population so that we don't put our wildlife at risk through stupidity?
So that's a great question. So in the past and present throughout the county, meetings like this, I do make myself available to. It doesn't matter if it's a weekend, it doesn't matter what day of the week. If you give me enough notice, I can make myself available. If you give me a list of stuff to address, I can address it. We've done plenty of workshops. I've done like the Sustainable Foods Workshop. It was like a 3-day event. Throughout the last 20 years, I probably average about 6 presentations a year to all the different boards. So as a community, especially as you get in these different developments, I encourage community outreach amongst each other and then create an environment for me to come up and present and answer a lot of these questions. That gives everybody a chance to voice their concerns, ask their questions, and then it also allows the permanent residents to get those tools to pass on to the visitors. That's been the most effective way. But once again, the person has to want to be involved in it and care enough.
I just have a clarification question. In terms of like bears and using deterrents, you mentioned that your department uses dogs for non-lethal deterrents to, for behavioral change?
So right now that's with the mountain lions, not with the bears.
With the mountain lions, okay. But the proposed legislation is for private hunters to use dogs to hunt the bears, which is certainly lethal action. So there's a difference between what you're describing and the proposed legislation, correct?
There's a difference because this is 2 different spectrums. The process of the hounds being utilized would be the same. So a private person's hounds aren't killing bears versus a government person's hounds being playful with the bears. The education that the bear's going to get is going to be the same across the board. If the hunter decides to harvest that animal, then obviously that is lethal. The hunter can also walk away if it's not an animal that he chooses to harvest. So there is education there. So there's some overlap. There are some definite differences because what we're doing with this, if it's hazing, obviously it's not a lethal removal. If we were doing a lethal removal on a depredation permit, the process would be exactly the same.
Gotcha.
All right, we're gonna hold the, it's all right. Okay.
Thank you, Raven. Just one question about beaver, not bear. 25 years ago, beavers locally were seen primarily as pests by public works and also by many property owners. These days, they're seen as partners in watershed restoration work. What's the county's perspective on beaver? I mean, it seemed as if you're reactive in terms of wiring trees, but are you promoting populations of beaver in the area?
So when it comes to anything wildlife, everything is taken by each individual call. There's, like for our department, there's no blanket assessment on we need X amount of beavers in this watershed, we need X amount of beavers here. So one of the things to answer your question of promoting beavers on the landscape is doing all the non-lethal preventive measures. That's going to keep those beavers on the landscape, but that relationship between the property owners and that beaver. If we don't do those non-lethals and those property owners start having excessive damage, pine trees dropping on $2 million homes and stuff like that, that's going to encourage those landowners to want to get a depredation permit to remove that beaver. Then that beaver is no longer on the landscape. So to answer your question, the preventive measures and these type of meetings and stuff, and then having workshops on how to beaver-proof your property, so you're not having big trees falling in your homes. That is encouraging those on the landscape with that coexisting.
So, thanks.
All right, thank you, Larry. We appreciate it.
Real quick, if anybody wants the number to the ag office to reach me, feel free to come up to me and I can just give it out to you. We didn't have business cards that had them on it this morning. It was the wrong number.
All right, up next we have Carly White, and she's with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and she's a unit biologist for Nevada County. Welcome, Carly.
said, I'm Carly. I'm the unit wildlife biologist for Placer and Nevada counties. I've been with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for about 9 years. The first 6 years of my career, I worked in this area on deer population surveys. I spent 2 years in the Bay Area as a biologist doing drought research, and then about a year ago, I came back up here to my current position. So today I'm going to go over a little bit about what the state is doing with our major game species, so deer and bear. We'll talk about the deer conservation and management plan, some survey methods and population modeling that we're working on, and give an update on chronic wasting disease. Then I'll switch over to bears and talk about similar the conservation and management plan, our EMAT lending program, and the Tahoe Emergency Bear Team. Okay, so the statewide deer conservation and management plan, we are in the process of updating it right now. I'm actually on the technical advisory committee for that. So what the plan will do is it outlines some of the data sources that we collect, how we're going to use that data to make decisions, and kind of give a big picture and present a framework for how more specific regional management plans can be written in different parts of the state that experience different pressures on the deer and have different habitat types. So it's really like a larger overarching plan to give the rest of the state guidelines on how to manage deer. It does not include any regulatory changes, but it will present a current population estimate. And it should be out for public review later this year. The goal was spring, but I think it's not going to quite make spring. So keep an eye out for a press release if you're interested in commenting. We will review and respond to any comments that the public submits. So some of the data that we do collect for deer now, one of the most exciting ones are deer aerial surveys. We do this in the, aerial surveys can really only be completed where there's no tree cover because you need to be able to see the ground and count the deer. So in this area, that would be the X zones. You could see Truckee is that yellow star up there. So for us, the relevant zones are X7A and X7B. And we try to collect this data annually. We fly up in the helicopter and we use distance sampling. So we fly lines through these hunt zones, and when we see deer, we mark the location, we count the group size, and pick out bucks, fawns, does. And then back at the computer, we estimate the detection probability, what the chances were that we would find the deer based on the habitat cover where we were flying, and also the distance that the deer that we saw were from the helicopter. Basically, it all goes into a fancy statistical model, and we could get population estimates from that. So we just did this in January 2025, and the results are pending. We did see less deer than previous years, but again, results are pending. And this is just one method that we use, and we can only, like I said, use it in specific areas. So we need more than just this to get really accurate population estimates. So something that the state has been doing for just over 10 years now, but we're still improving, are genetic mark recapture population studies. So what these are on the ground. We're going to selected locations across the landscape, and we try to survey evenly in both migratory deer range and in resident deer range to try to tease out those population differences that Jim mentioned between our higher elevation migratory herds and our lower elevation resident herds that do not migrate. And we walk deer trails basically for 1 to 2 kilometers, and we collect deer poop. And then we go back to these sites multiple times over a month. And then that deer poop gets sent to a lab, they extract the DNA from it, and they can tell the sex and the individual ID of the deer. And then they can look at the ratio of the number of new deer to the same deer that we're seeing on each revisit at the same site. And then that ratio can be extrapolated into a population density. To go along with that, we also put up game cameras. The DNA tells us sex and individual, but it does not tell us age. So the game cameras help us get that ratio of fawns to adults. And then finally, we put GPS collars out on the landscape so that we can get survival data of the deer, migration data, and home range size. And so all of that can go together to create a map of density of deer expected across the landscape based on habitat. And so we did a sort of pilot version of this project from 2016 to 2020 that's kind of serving as our baseline population estimate. And then now we're currently in a revisit of that project in this area. So we did our first summer last year, and we'll be going through 2027. And I'm managing that effort regionally in our 17 counties of CDFW Region 2. So the red dots on this map are the places that we surveyed last year. So you can imagine that roughly tripling in the next 3 years. So all of that, plus the deer aerial surveys, plus our hunter harvest data, plus any other game cameras we might have out on the landscape for other purposes, or other deer data that we may collect as it comes, is all going to be put into one large integrated population model, or IPM. And this is something that is currently being developed and will be described in the statewide deer plan when it comes out. Basically, the goal of the integrated population model is for it to learn the relationship between the different parameters of deer populations. So survival based on sex and age, reproduction based on age, all of those types of things. And once it's fully developed and running, the idea will be that we can do intensive surveys like the deer poop collection I described every 5 years or so, and more passive surveys like just cameras or the helicopter flights in the in-between years. And this model should be able to estimate what the deer population is every year and detect trends. So it'll be a couple years before it's really running in full in that way, but it is being developed right now. Okay, chronic wasting disease. As I'm sure many of you have heard, chronic wasting disease has been discovered in California in 2023. There were 2 initial cases in Inyo and Madera counties. Chronic wasting disease is a fatal neurological disease of cervids, so deer. Elk and moose can also be susceptible, but we haven't detected it in elk in California, and we don't have moose. It's a disease where misfolded proteins congregate in the brain, and deer become emaciated, lethargic. They'll have a wide stance, have trouble keeping their head up, and it is always fatal. It's also highly contagious. It can spread between individuals interacting with each other. It can also be left in the environment and picked up by another deer passing through. So it's of high concern. It was first detected in Colorado in 1967, I believe. And as you can see from this map, it's now in most of the United States. We tested around 450 deer, I believe, last year for chronic wasting disease. Is our first big effort to survey since it was detected here in California. And most of those samples come from hunter-harvested deer. And there were only 2 more detections. So to this date, we still only have 4 detections of chronic wasting disease in California, all in the same locations of those initial 2 in Inyo and Madera counties. And we are just constantly trying to vamp up our sampling for the years to come. So if you are a hunter, you're only required to submit a sample if you're in the from your harvested deer if you are in the counties of detection. Up here, it's optional. But if you would like to have your deer sampled, or if you're willing, because we're trying to get as many samples as we can, we will have hunter check stations and also our CDFW offices and some participating meat processors that can take samples from your harvested deer. And we have a map and a spreadsheet on our website that's updated every time we get a new sampling location. So it's the best place to keep up on that. We also have instructions on our website on how to collect and submit samples yourself. If you're willing or interested, we're taking the lymph node out of the neck of the deer. So obviously it has to be a dead deer. So you can find more information on that on our website. If you just Google CDFW, chronic wasting disease, it'll come right up. And finally, if you see a sick deer and you want to report it, there's lots of ways to get in contact with us, but the best way to report sick deer is through the mortality reporting portal on our wildlife health website, which the link is up here. Yeah. Okay, switch over to bears. Similar to deer, we recently updated the statewide bear conservation and management plan. The period for public comment closed last June, and they are currently reviewing and responding to comments. But you can read the most recent draft on our website at this link. The plan states the statewide deer population, or sorry, not deer, bear, statewide bear population as about 65,000. And in the Northern Sierra, which is the yellow on this map, it estimates it at about 15,000. And you can see by this map, these are large-scale areas where these population estimates are. We don't have a very detailed study of deer population, bear population, I mostly work with deer, in the Tahoe Basin. However, we do know that the Tahoe Basin is some of the densest bear population in the black bear range. So that's most of North America. And while CDFW doesn't have a detailed study on that, the Nevada Department of Wildlife does. So we know that they are uniquely very densely populated in the Tahoe Basin. We already have an integrated population model for bear. We have for a while. It uses DNA and age data from teeth. All harvested bears, the hunters are required to submit a tooth with their tag validation. So that is what the model is based on now. But we did in the past year just start a statewide bear collaring project to try to improve that model with survival and birth rates of bears. And as it's been alluded to several times, human-bear interaction has increased significantly in the last 5 years or so. And as part of the response to that, the department has created a new position. So we do have a full-time Tahoe bear biologist now. And she is working on increasing and improving our outreach and education efforts. She also responds to conflicts herself and is working on some of this collaring research. So also mentioned briefly is our new EMAT landing program. This is also something that we've recently developed to try to help with some of the increased conflict workload. So EMATs, they give a temporary shock. They cause no permanent damage to bears or even household pets. It's just a unpleasant experience that trains them to not enter wherever the mat is placed, whether it's a door, a window, or a crawl space. So we have a pilot program we started last year. We have about 20 mats that are available for landing statewide. Most of them are used in the Tahoe Basin, though. And the best way to get in contact or find out more information about this is to contact our human-wildlife conflict staff. So the hotline and email are on the slide. Those are also the best lines for reporting incidents or getting help with bear issues. They're monitored every day. Okay, more Tahoe bears. CDFW is part of the Tahoe Interagency Bear Team, and this is a collaborative group of the bear managers and bear scientists in the Tahoe Basin. So we work together to produce press releases with the most updated and accurate information. We also host outreach and education events. We had our first Bear Fest last year, and we also hold an annual managers meeting where we try to meet with the executive management of these core 4 agencies, as well as all the law enforcement in the basin to give an update on what's going on with bears and try to make requests for what we need to improve bear management in the basin. And both CDFW and the TIBT are BearWise certified. And BearWise is a kind of a larger version of the TIBT. It's a nationwide program with North America's top bear biologists creating and vetting outreach and education material to help get the information straight from scientists to the public on how to coexist with bears and live in bear country. So if you want more information on the TABT, that's our website. And that is about all I had. So this is just all the same contact information I had in there, but if you wanted to snap a picture of our links or anything like that, it's all together. And my email's up there as well.
Questions for Carly? Yes. Carly, what's the average lifespan of a bear and a deer?
Ugh.
Do they get?
It can vary widely in the wild, but the oldest known bear in the wild that I've ever heard of was like in its 30s. But I mean, more commonly, probably like 5 to 10 years. And then deer, I think the oldest deer I've ever seen is maybe like 10 to 12, but they probably on average live 3 to 5.
Do you have any information on the porcupine populations? Is there any monitoring of those? And as long as we're talking about porcupines, can you just say something briefly about elk?
Sure. We don't monitor porcupines. Just the way CDFW is structured, our research is either on endangered and threatened species or game species. So porcupines is kind of in a gap that it's hard for us to get money for. And elk, so
I'm not talking about it.
Oh, okay. He's going to talk about elk. We don't have elk in Placer and Nevada counties where I cover, except the occasional wayward bull, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, in the back.
The wasting disease, is that bacterial or viral?
So it's the similar strain of disease as mad cow disease. It's a prion, so it is kind of neither. And that is probably the depth of my veterinarian knowledge to describe it more. I guess one other thing I could say is that it hasn't been detected in humans at all. Although the FDA does recommend not eating meat of the infected individuals. And it spreads very easily. So if a deer dies and decomposes and a plant grows up there, another deer eating that plant by the carcass could get it.
Yes.
With the Tahoe Bear group, are you guys getting consistent data on road strikes and road mortality across both states? And have you thought more about getting those data out to the public? I feel like that could help in two ways. One, slow down everybody. And also put some perspective into bear populations and just how many bears die on our roads every year. Because it's an early morning thing. I see a ton. Most people have no idea. And, I think some of the anti-hunting sentiment would be, folks would be quite surprised to know how many bears die from vehicle collisions versus hunters in the Carson Range or something.
Yeah, it's something that's on our radar. Similarly, with all these other things that I've described that we're starting up now, the state's starting up a more robust connectivity program. So they're doing a lot of work to improve roadkill data. It's hard data to collect. And also that's something that the bear biologist, the new bear biologist in Tahoe, is working on, is developing several studies to improve we kind of know what's going on from being there, but to improve kind of our statistical of saying there's more bears here, they're getting hit by cars, all that stuff. She's in the works of developing better studies for that. So it's coming, but you're right, a lot of bears get hit. They get cleaned up quickly because nobody wants to see that.
Caltrans does collect data as well.
Yeah, we're working on better data sharing agreements with Caltrans as part of that, so there's a lot of pieces moving. Hopefully in the next couple of years you'll see better product from us on that.
Thanks, Carly. All right. Up next, we have Libby Ehlers, who's the Wolf Coordinator and Senior Environmental Scientist Specialist for Plumas and Sierra Counties and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Welcome, Libby.
Thank you. Well, hi everybody. My name is Libby. I'm pretty new. I started in January. In the process of relocating from Montana. I am a large mammal specialist. I've been in the field for about 25 years on endangered species and threatened species, and focused on everything from wolves up to migratory caribou. Really, which is what I spent my PhD doing up in Alaska and the Yukon. And so I'm really excited to be here. I'm a wolf coordinator, but also I get to work with Carly and work on a lot of the migratory species and the pronghorn elk and deer, as well as beaver and some other critters. But wolves are taking up quite a bit of my time, so I'm happy to be here and give a little update to you all. So thank you for inviting me. And again, my contact information is up here, And I'm based right now at Portola, but I am looking at Truckee all the way up to Quincy, so maybe I'll chat with some of you after about bringing my family out here. So what is a wolf? They're really one of the most widely distributed land mammals across the world. They're very effective. There's been coexistence for a long time, and there's a really interesting history with this animal. Like many animals that we've shared these landscapes with across North America and beyond. Their primary prey are large hooved animals, or what we often refer to as ungulates. And many examples are deer, elk, moose, caribou, wild sheep, depending on where you do live. All these photos are from California wolves, and they are on our website as well. They're also pretty important scavengers. They scavenge a lot on dead animals that may be victims to winter kill, that may not survive winter. Your elk and deer are often animals that may not survive over winter, and they rely on some of that carrion to help break it down in the system, and so they are kind of they serve that scavenger role. And then during the summer times when there's more food available on the landscape, they may break up and go for things like rabbits, beaver, and other animals that they can catch. They're what we call an apex predator. They play really important roles in some of the regulations of the systems that they live in, especially with things like disease that run through animal populations. They're able to kind of pick through some of those disease animals and keep those populations a little bit more in control. And in more human-dominated landscapes, we also do have challenges with increased conflicts, and it's mostly with livestock. The most conflicts we see are with cattle. And so just some things that we kind of get on the same page, like some of the things that wolves are not. Sometimes it's really, as people, it's good to have our emotions play a role in it, but sometimes they may get pinned as a good or bad. And a lot of wildlife, it's tricky to classify them as good or bad. They're other species and they have their functions in the systems. And so and then we've grown up on a lot of folklore, and so just kind of grounding us again. We have some great references on our website also in terms of how can you compare a wolf to other species that it may be related to or may look similar to. And so if you're kind of wondering what does a coyote versus a wolf look like, it can be tricky sometimes, especially with really furry winter coats. And so we have some guides on the website. Or maybe tricky with a husky mixed dog sometimes can look really wolfy. And so we have some guides that help kind of distinguish some of those unique characteristics that can help people on our website. So some history of wolves across North America and California specifically. There's some really interesting history out there from 100,000 years ago with our interactions with animals, way long time ago. There's information out there documenting in some of these ethnographic studies of some cultures that really learned how to be successful hunters from watching animals on the landscape, included wolves in that. And then throughout time, there's some cultures that have really feared wolves, and then there's some cultures that have really revered them. So they're very interesting in terms of how they can shape our perspectives and our values, and how our values and perspectives really shape how we think of these animals on the landscape. And over time, that's kind of, going back to the 1800s and 1900s, we saw some pretty big declines in ungulate populations from overharvesting and some other situations that happened. And then we had some increases in agriculture and pastoralism. And then because of those declining ungulate populations, and we saw a little bit more pressure on the livestock producers, and there was a big predator eradication program that happened. Let me get my water really quick. And there was a big effort to eradicate a whole suite of predators around 1900 to 1920s. And that really wiped out wolves, particularly from the lower 48 states by about 1926. And so come more recent time, the Endangered Species Act was created in the 70s, and wolves were listed about 1978. And there's been these series of delisting and relisting and all these situations over the last 30 years. And I'll touch a little bit of that today where we are today. Here's a little visual map. And this light green area here is kind of their historic range. So you can see that wolves historically ranged around a large portion of North America. And then this darker green is where suitable habitat is. And the purple is more of where current range is. And this has changed a little bit as we've seen a little bit more expansion crossing into the Cascades and down into these areas where we are today. But just to kind of give those of you who like visual maps, I know I do, just to kind of understand where some of the movements have happened and where wolves are today. As was mentioned already, wolves naturally recolonized into California from Oregon. So that means their movements have come here. They've reproduced, the population has grown, and they've looked for new habitats and have made their way down into California. And so in 2011, that happened with an Oregon collared wolf, OR7, and many of you may know that story. But then we didn't really have a first pack that was established until 2015. And that pack was known as a Shasta pack, and we kind of consider a pack 2 or more wolves, and if they can successfully raise a litter of current young of that year. And then in 2016, California developed a conservation plan for gray wolves, and that's really how we kind of guide our management of the animals in the state. And if you think about when wolves left this landscape in the mid-1925, almost 100 years ago, a lot has changed. Almost 40 million people in the state. The landscape is very different. We've developed a lot of it. And there's also a lot of agriculture and urban-rural interfaces. And so this is a recovering endangered species. And so they are federally listed under the Endangered Species Act. And also they're protected as an endangered species under the California Endangered Species Act. And so we, as the Department of Fish and Wildlife, have the authorization from the federal agencies to manage, monitor, and research these populations. And we do this across a lot of collaborations as well, from Forest Service to our federal partners and nonprofits and everyone in between. And so our goal is to really mitigate and minimize wolf negative interactions with livestock producers and losses, and also to really understand what the population is doing. And so today, with our research and methods, at the end of 24, we have a minimum estimated count of 50 across the state. And so we know that there are more, but that's how we kind of use our collared animals to understand these populations. We do different tracking surveys, but we know there's at least 50. And then there's more than that, but that's our minimum known count. And in 2025, we have a total of 14 collared individuals across 4 packs. And this is really helping us understand some of these movements and where they're going, and also their interactions with the landscape, some of their prey, and livestock producers. And we're continuing this kind of phased approach, which if anybody's interested, I'll talk to you more about that one-on-one. Feel free to contact me. I'm not going to talk about it too much today. This is our kind of what we call our blob map, and you can find this on our website as well. Like Carly was mentioning, you can just Google CDFW wolf program, and it'll bring you right to our main wolf page. And so we have areas where we know there's wolf activity, which are these kind of hatched red areas where we know there's some individuals, but we're still learning information about them. Versus we're pretty confident that these yellow named areas are what we're calling packs. And so we have collars in the Bam-Sayo pack, which is mostly in the Sierra Valley. Diamond is kind of in this Diamond Mountain area. In Lassen pack, Harvey, we have 4 collars on there now in Region 1. And then the Whaleback, which still includes a male that was originally collared in Oregon. But we're really excited that we're kind of picking up more of this collaring effort, and we're getting funding to do that and to learn more about these animals. And then we have to split the map between the southern part because we still have this really interesting pack down in Yolemite with a couple collared individuals down there. And then wrapping up here, this is our main wolf program webpage. There's a lot of resources on here. We really rely a lot on public sightings. And so if anybody you know does think that they see a wolf, please report it. And we do follow up and check that, and usually follow up with people. It really helps to have location information. Pictures are helpful. I know they're not always possible if you're driving, but you can report sightings there. We have a lot of information on here from our known wolves, which is that map you saw, the sightings. We have information about our conflict and depredation program. We have working groups, and then we also have some more information here too if you need to learn what does a wolf look like. And we kind of alluded to this, and I'll wrap up, but we have a lot of resources to help livestock producers right now. We're really trying, and following what Larry was talking about, to work on non-lethal tools to really help producers. Everything from putting flags up, livestock guard dog programs that we'd like to see in the future, flashing lights. There's some, where we're looking at diet research studies, and our goal is to really reduce those losses. We have a compensation program for people who do experience loss, and we hope to keep that funded over time. So if someone were to lose a calf or a cow to a wolf, we can have them tell us what that market value would have been for that animal, and we try to compensate them back for that to minimize some of that economic pressure and stress and loss that they may experience. And over time, really hope we can start doing more what we call deterrence to deter these animals from being close to where people are raising cattle mostly. And again, this is our website. Just an example of some of the tools that we have to reduce some of those losses or interactions that we're experiencing. So again, there's some good information there. And we're continuing to work with a lot of community groups to share information on a regular basis, to do talks, and also to talk to residential populations that may have a lot of questions about, you know, what they do if they see a wolf, or how do we need to worry if we recreate. And those are things that are really valid questions. And it's a very different situation than mountain lions. And all I will end on that is that I've run into many wolves in the wild. I've been working with them for, 25, 30 years, from Yellowstone all the way up to Alaska. I bumped them off carcasses, and they look at me and they run away. And so I think like their cousins, the dogs, they have a natural innate fear of people, and they cannot live in really high density human areas, but there is that space in between where they share these landscapes with us. And I hope we can continue to talk and answer questions, or really have engaging civil conversations to help people understand how to continue sharing the landscape with these animals. Thank you.
We're going to hold questions now for all the speakers until the very end, so if you guys can stay around.
That's great.
Just so we can get everybody through. So up next, are we going to do a computer switch as well? All right. We have Will Richardson for the Tahoe Institute of Natural Science. Welcome, Will.
Watch
It's
out for
hazardous.
that. Yeah. Do you have HDMI?
I do.
Are you writing?
No signal. That's not good. Oh. All right. I gotta switch these. Sorry, I gotta switch this. Switch monitors here. Not getting any.
I can share everybody's presentations with you too, just so you know.
Once. Hi everybody. Thanks for having me while I fiddle with this. I'm curious, did you drive from Portola this morning?
I did.
Yeah. Where'd you come from? And you? Okay, that's icy drive.
Do you want to do questions while
Sure.
Do questions while we work on it.
I think this is gonna work. Yay! All right.
Okay.
So, my name is Will. I'm with the Tahoe Institute for Natural Science. We are a research, education, and outreach organization. We focus mostly on like upland natural history. There's a lot of groups around here working on issues with the lake and the Truckee River, and we tend to try to complement that by keeping our feet dry. We do have a long-term goal of bringing a world-class interpretive nature center to the region. But in the last 15 years, we've been just chipping away at our programs, which, like I said, are research, mostly wildlife-based, and we work on all kinds of different taxa, bugs, birds mostly. We bring that information to the kids through lots of education programs, lots of in-school programs, lots of field trips, and summer camps. I want to just mention briefly in case you know any kids. Registration is open. I brought some rack cards that are on the back table there. I also have lots of stickers. If you like our logo, welcome to them. And then we take that education to the rest of the community through lots and lots of outings and events and guided walks, lectures, slideshows, festival. I didn't quite know what to talk about today, so I thought I'd just do a little grab bag of some other groups of animals that probably wouldn't get mentioned. One thing that we work on is montane rabbits. Hares and rabbits. Does anybody besides maybe Todd know what this is? There's two of them. These are white-tailed jackrabbits. These are one of two species that we have in Tahoe that turn white in the wintertime. And most people, I'm guessing, have never heard of a white-tailed jackrabbit, which is one of the reasons we study them. Because somebody's got to. Rabbits are keystone species wherever they occur. Rabbits being rabbits, they make a lot of new rabbits. And so they have a big impact on their environment. They eat a lot of vegetation, which has a strong impact. But they're also really important as a prey species for mid-sized carnivore and large carnivores, even up to wolves. But anyway, so we're working with on issues of snowshoe hare and white-tailed jackrabbit and the cottontails and learning some interesting stuff. I just got this video clip the other day. We're doing some resurvey work in all the California state parks, and this is down at DL Bliss, where snowshoe hares have almost completely disappeared over the last 30 years, probably because of fuels thinning. Thankfully, there's lots of high-density trees still on the landscape, so snowshoe hares aren't going to disappear anytime soon. But in suboptimal habitat, which is what DL Bliss is now, they may be relying on bear scat, what he's eating. So, anyway, thought that was pretty wild to discover. But as I mentioned, they are really important for mid and large size carnivores. So the classic example from your ecology book is the lynx and the snowshoe hare pelts from the Hudson Bay Company trapping records going back in Quebec for like 200 years or something. Anyway, we don't have Canada lynx here. But what we do have, potentially, are Sierra Nevada red fox. Now, this is a photo we got from doing some bait experiments to try to best monitor snowshoe hares. And so these are snowshoe hare tracks all around. These are little sticks that held pieces of apple to bring in the snowshoe hares. That is a red fox. We got this picture up at Incline Lake. Previous winter. Sierra Nevada red fox is a federally endangered subspecies of red fox that historically occurred throughout the Sierra Nevada and up into the Cascades, and pretty much just totally trapped out, wiped out. They were refound in the Lassen area in the 1980s and have been studied really extensively there since. In 2010, they were refound at Snore Pass after a 75-year absence. And so anyway, folks, a whole interagency group has been working really aggressively to try to learn more about Sierra Nevada red fox. So we want to study the the prey base for that. This is a photo my friend Jeff got on his game camera. I don't know if anybody recognizes the ski hill in the background. That's North Star. This is Martis Valley. So this animal showed up 2 different times last winter with our incline detection in between, roughly halfway in between. So this may be the same animal. But anyway, I was working with white-tailed jackrabbits a lot in the early 2010s, and looking also for red fox in the Carson Pass area. Didn't see any, but they are there now. So Ben Sachs' lab out of UC Davis and Kate Quinn, they've been doing a lot of work and able to establish that that's this bright green dot here, that they are now at Carson Pass. And they seem to be potentially moving north. Now, one of the problems with red foxes is that the genetics really need to be established to know if what you're looking at is a Sierra Nevada red fox or possibly some other red fox that has come up from elsewhere. So historically, there were a lot of fur farms all over the place, and there's just a lot of mixed up European and other red fox genetics. There was historically a Central Valley red fox. There's Rocky Mountain red fox. There's a bunch of different subspecies groups. So it gets a little cloudy when a fox just shows up. I forget what year it was. I think 2013, a red fox showed up at Donner Lake. It was hanging out on somebody's deck. And anyway, they got scat from it, and that turned out to be a non-native red fox. So it was not a Sierra Nevada red fox. But there's a lot of promise and hope that Sierra Nevada red fox is expanding a lot. If you look at the detections by year in Yosemite National Park, you see a real jump just last year. And we've had red foxes in the last year turn up Martis Valley twice, the Incline Lake one, Sagehen, Markleyville, Gardnerville, and then Todd just sent me yesterday this beautiful, I forget his name, John Fish? Peter Fish got this on his game camera in Granite Chief Wilderness, backside of ski area there. So there's hope. I want to go back to this real quick. The Lassen population is horribly inbred, and they are looking at possibly translocating animals from other populations, likely from the Rocky Mountains, over to get some more genetic diversity into that population. But I'm hopeful that with this sort of northern push of foxes from the core of the Sierra Range, and maybe they may connect. One thing that may help with that is all the wolves moving back in. Wolves kind of can knock down the coyote populations a little bit, which in turn help out the foxes. There's what's called a trophic cascade there, where the big dogs harass the medium-sized dogs, which keep down the little guys. And so when you bring wolves back into the system, there's a whole chain of other knock-on effects, and wolves can be good for foxes. So here's hoping. All right, there was a question about elk. Who besides Todd knows that we have elk in the Truckee area? So this is a pretty new phenomenon. So here's a photo from Sierra Valley. Elk have been moving down over the last 20 years and starting to fill in Sierra Valley pretty well. Right here in Truckee, they're far from commonplace, but yeah, you do get occasionally wayward bulls turning up. There were 2 yearling bulls that were photographed along I-80 at Florestan, July of 2023. Watch your speed. But what's less known is that there's been a herd of cows on the north side of Stampede for the past few years. as many as 12 have been seen. Somebody got a photo of what they thought were elk down by Gold Ranch, across the river, down in Verdi there, last summer. So it may be that same herd, may be doing some elevational movement. It'd be very easy for elk from Stampede to go down Dog Valley and then under that bridge. So we'll see, but this is a warning for you guys to eyes open, and we may see some elk moving into the area. This is a photo taken from the Independence Lake area from also 2023. We didn't really realize that elk were ever native to the Sierra Nevada, but Rick Lamon and some other folks have done some really interesting work to look into this, and a lot of the evidence they found was in old newspapers and stuff, and so it's not easy to misidentify an elk and a deer if you're gonna hunt it and shoot it. But anyway, there's good records of elk being shot elsewhere in the Sierra Nevada, including 2 taken at Zephyr Point in 1867. So historically, there were elk here, and they're still coming back in. A bull made it down to, was it St. Mary's Pass or Mary's Pass, down by Sonora Pass a few years ago. So expect more elk showing up. All right, lastly, just another thing to keep your eyes open about, rattlesnakes. We didn't have a single rattlesnake record for the Tahoe Basin prior to 2015. They're here. Things are changing. This on the left here is Fallen Leaf Lake last year. Most of the rattlesnakes are coming up over the Sierra Crest, and most of the records are still right up along the crest on the west shore. Desolation, lots. But also Donner Summit area, big time. If you guys go to Loch Levin Lakes or Long Lake, those areas are really getting pretty snaky. So a few are coming up from, so these are 2 totally different subspecies, possibly different species, that some are coming up from the Nevada side. Matt Herron got this at Boca Dam last year. So be aware of that too, out in Glenshire, Boca Stampede, maybe some rattlesnakes. 2 summers ago, I went looking up General Creek up above Tahoe and found this one. It wasn't that hard. So we have rattlesnakes now. Here's a photo from Loch Levin Lake a couple years ago. A dog was bit in 2016. So just a heads up. Now, I think this is good. It's a bummer that it's almost certainly a response to climate change, but they do keep down a lot of diseases that we don't want: bubonic plague, hantavirus, relapsing tick fever, and they give you a little courtesy buzz so you don't step on them. So that's good. Okay, so we do a lot of work with birds. I assumed you'd want to hear about avian flu. I don't have a lot of information about avian flu here. We've had a bunch of cases in both Nevada and California. Almost the human cases, all but one, have been dairy workers. So you guys are probably good. And almost all the cases have been large birds. A lot of waterfowl, a lot of raptors, birds that eat other birds. And there's almost no transmission in little songbirds. They're just, it's spread through like saliva. And so, anyway, we can talk about bird feeders if you want. There's lots of bear issues there, but happy to chat with anybody about other stuff. I'm getting the shepherd's hook. All right. All right.
Thanks, Will. Okay. Tahoe Housing Hub, our quick nonprofit presentation, and wrap it up. Thank you. Five minutes.
Good morning. My name is Erin Casey, and I am the CEO for the Tahoe Housing Hub. We are a newish. We've been around for about a year and a half now. We're a 501c4 nonprofit corporation. For those of you who are less familiar with nonprofit structure, what that means is we're able to do a fair amount of advocacy work in the community, which makes us a bit unique from other organizations that are C3s or charitable in nature. We worked very closely with the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, the Martis Fund, and other partners to develop the concept for the Tahoe Housing Hub. I've actually got 3 posters up here that you're welcome to take a look at later that have more detail. And then I do want to mention that on your table, there is a half sheet that has a QR code, so you can scan that, and it will take you to our website where you can sign up for our e-newsletter and email. So what we focus on currently are a few things. Number one, our flagship program is something that we call the ADU Accelerator. And so this is a program that's modeled after an existing program in California where the agency provides free technical assistance to homeowners looking to develop accessory dwelling units for the workforce. The reason this is important is because in our experience and others as well, is that many people who want to build ADUs are not necessarily experienced in construction or permitting. And in our community, particularly in the Tahoe Basin, it's challenging when you have to deal with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency in addition to whichever jurisdiction you're working with for permitting. So it can be very confusing, overwhelming, expensive, and timely, or time-consuming, I should say. And so what we do is we work to provide that technical assistance from feasibility all the way through to lease-up support. And so that doesn't cost the homeowner anything. It is covered with support from the Martis Fund as well as the North Tahoe Community Alliance. And Carolina Scarsha, who is our lead staff person on that program, as well as Shelley Purdy, are both here and would be happy to answer any questions if any of you have interest or know of anyone who is interested in building an ADU. In addition to that, we are really about gathering information, sharing that with the community, doing advocacy both with elected officials, but really trying to get information out about decision-making that's happening in several public settings that community members who care about housing may have interest in. And so our goal is to sort of ensure that those that are impacted by housing policy, by decisions around code or projects are actually present and able to provide feedback and input, because typically for those of us who go to a lot of public meetings, it's difficult to get there, right? They're evenings, you have a family, there's tons of them. Some jurisdictions have multiple committees with public meetings. So it can be very overwhelming to know when to go, what the item is, details about the issue. And so our goal is to really help people to understand what's happening and to really also encourage them to share their story. Many people in our community have housing stories to share. I have my own, and I'm sure those of you in the room who've lived here for a long time either have one yourself or know people who do. And I know you had said earlier looking for housing, so we might be able to help you with that. And so not only are we, I'd say, looking for individuals to share their stories, but for those of you representing agencies or organizations, I think many of you have probably also experienced challenges in recruiting or retaining employees due to the challenging housing dynamics in our community. And so for us, we think telling those stories has a significant impact in these public settings where pretty significant decisions are being made around workforce housing. And so if you have interest in staying informed on these issues, and we do cover, by the way, the North Lake Tahoe Truckee region. So we do work in the Tahoe Basin, but we also do work in unincorporated Nevada County, as well as the town of Truckee boundaries currently with our ADU Accelerator, as well as much of our advocacy work that can be, that is explained in more detail here below. And so with that, I think that's my 5 minutes. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of information, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, let's give a big round of applause to Jim, Larry, Carly, Libby, Will, and Erin for being our speakers this morning. It was a packed program. Thank you very much. Hopefully some of the speakers can stay around and answer questions, those especially that did not have the opportunity to answer any questions. We're going to jump into, because we're trying to get you all out of here, the door prizes. So we have Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation fanny pack and water bottle. Told that fanny packs are cool again now, right? Like waist packs or something. They're not called fanny packs. And the lucky winner of that is Anna Roth. Anna Roth. Get your cool on. There you go. Welcome to Truckee. All right, up next, I've just mixed all in with everything here. We have 2 Tahoe Donner complimentary day passes for this winter season. This afternoon would be a good time to go. Valid at the Downhill or Cross Country Center. That will go to Crystal Sumner with TTCF. All right. There you go. I'm going to walk there. And up next is a return ticket to Good Morning Truckee, and that will go to Shelly Purdy. Shelly Purdy. That's that. And last but not least, I'll model it here, a Truckee sweatshirt. Jim, you're all getting excited. Yeah, that's right. Okay. This is going to Kaylee Mack. Kaylee Mack. Congratulations. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for Good Morning Truckee, and we appreciate all of you showing up. If you want to ask the speakers any questions, they're up here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next month. Yep. Thank you.